This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Okay, so it's Tuesday, which means we're doing a top 5 video, and much like last week, I thought I'd do another sort of tuition-based one. Remember last week we did the Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of thing. This week, though, it's more focusing on beginner to intermediate players. Basically, we're going to be looking at what I think, in my experience as a guitar teacher of 30 years now, what I think are the 5 biggest difficulties experienced by beginner to intermediate guitar players, and a few tips on how to get past them. Let's begin with...
I'm really struggling with bar chords.
Yes, bar chords, the thing that has stumped many beginner to intermediate guitarists since time immemorial, really. It's a tricky one, this. I would go so far as to say there's no steeper part of the learning curve than that transition from not being able to play a bar chord to being able to play a bar chord, certainly for the beginner or intermediate guitarist. That said, there's never been a better time to be a beginner guitarist, because the quality of entry-level instruments these days is just light years ahead of the kind of things that were available when I was learning back in the late 70s. But nevertheless, it can be a tricky thing to do, to play a bar chord, so let's have a look at basically the things to avoid doing, really. The traps to avoid, the bad habits to make sure you don't get into. Now, if you're a child or an adolescent and you're learning to play the guitar, then something I've noticed a lot with people, say, let's say between the ages of 10 and 20 years, when they're learning to play the guitar, is where their thumb seems to end up coming out down there. And that's not just on bar chords, it's on like loads of chords. They'll do an A chord and their thumb will be there, they'll do an E chord and their thumb will be there. Don't know why that is, but it's something I've noticed consistently with people of that age group. Don't do it, especially on bar chords. Your thumb, let's just turn around, needs to be at the back of the neck, like that, directly behind your first finger, so that basically your thumb and finger can act like a capo or capo, if you prefer, to get enough pressure on the strings. Secondly, don't bend or slant that finger like that, okay? The fret here is where the string is creating the note, and if you've got an amount of dead string that side of the fret, then that's going to buzz and rattle and cause all kinds of problems that you don't want. So nice and tight up against the fret wire. Finally, make sure that you're using what I call the corner of your finger. There's my phone going off. Don't use this fleshy front part of your finger like that. It's not going to get enough pressure on the string to hold the chord down. Try and use more this edge here, just by tilting your finger onto its side a little bit like that. Tight up against the fret, and you will get a bar chord, and it should sound like this. The final thing I would say about bar chords is that there is a no man's land. You can have the technique down perfectly, but not yet have developed the requisite strength in your hands to execute them properly. And that is really frustrating. I know, because I remember that stage of development myself. You're doing everything right, and it's still not working. Just keep on going at it. Don't give up. The strength will come, and as long as you're not getting into any bad technique habits like we've talked about, then you will get there, I promise you. Next.
Whenever I try and play a solo, it just sounds like a scale.
Yes, indeed. Soloing. I remember learning a pentatonic scale. The first time I knew it was a pentatonic scale was from an old BBC show called Rock School, which many of you may remember. But basically they showed us the pentatonic box, this one. And it was like, okay, now you know that shape, you can play solos. Can I? It was like everything I played sounded like just running up and down a scale. So how do we avoid running up and down a scale? Well, just don't run up and down a scale. That's the first thing. I've done a bunch of videos on this. It's all to do with phrasing. A simple tip that I'll give you now, but just go and search out some of my old videos on phrasing and stuff, is to just take, let's say, take 4 notes, maybe these 4 notes from that pattern. So you got 4 notes, number them 1, 2, 3 and 4. Then at random pick one of those notes, let's say number 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a pause after note number 3. So instead of sounding like this, it's now going to sound like this. Which already sounds more musical. Okay, put that to a backing track and it's going to sound like the beginnings of a lick. And if you can just get that little spark of an idea, you can come up with any number of variations on it. Maybe something like this. Simple little idea like that, and suddenly it sounds more like you're playing music than just noodling around a scale. So that is a good way to start getting the scaliness out of your lead guitar playing. Next.
What's the best way to learn the fretboard?
Yeah, how to learn the fretboard. First thing I would say is anytime you see any method that promises it can tell you learn the fretboard in 30 minutes or an hour or some ridiculously short amount of time, I promise you that is snake oil. It doesn't work, and people try method after method after method after method of doing this and get nowhere, and then think, well, maybe I'll just not bother learning the fretboard. For me it's a bizarre thing to say. I'm playing a musical instrument and I'm going to decide not to know where the notes are on that instrument. I know. But the short answer of how to actually do it is a little bit at a time over a period of time. Let's say, for example, you're playing a song where there's a guitar part in A minor. In A minor, you're jamming in that A minor pentatonic box that we looked at earlier. This one. Now, a commonplace chord change that you would get is where you have something in A minor, where you then go maybe to an F. So you might get this kind of chord change. That kind of thing. So obviously that F note has that F chord rather has an F note in it, and that F note isn't in the A minor pentatonic scale. We know that because as we walk down the A minor pentatonic scale from this top note here, it spells the word caged. C, A, G, E, D. C, A, G, E, D, C, and then A again. So there's no F note in that scale, but there's an F note in that chord that we're playing the scale over. So let's borrow the F note from the chord. Where will we find it? Well, things like this is how I approached it. I know from tuning the guitar that the 5th fret on this 2nd string is the E note that I tune this string to, and I can see when I play the F chord that it has the note 1 fret above that. So go 1 fret above that 5th fret there. So let's just mute the mic. So now you know where an F note is, and when you land on that F note over the top of the F chord that you're playing over in that A minor to F sequence, it's going to sound good. So you put in a little bit of effort to learn where one note is, and it's going to reward you and make you sound good. That then encourages you to think, where else can I find it? Well, again, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but basically the way to do this is, if you know that that F note there is 1 fret above this reference note here, this E, then count 5 notes down the pentatonic, the 5-note scale from E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You found E again, and the F note can be found 1 fret above that E note as well. So just finding one note that's going to be useful to you over a particular backing track and using it and kind of getting that nailed down. And then next time you do a different backing track and you're learning where another note is, and so on and so on. And gradually you start to just know where things are on the fretboard because you've worked them out in a way that's been useful to you in a playing situation. And that's how I did it, and I hope it works for you as well. Next.
I'm having problems bending strings.
Okay, string bending, yeah. This is something that I notice a lot of people struggle with, and it's because there's a technique, and you need to get the technique right, basically. If I just zoom in now, I can point the camera closer down at the at my guitar. Let's get a little bit more light in here. That's better. Okay, so if I'm playing, just playing notes of a scale like this, you can see the angle that my fingers are going onto the strings at. Very much that kind of angle like that. Okay. When we do a bend though, that's not going to work. What's going to happen if I go and try and bend this note, like I've gone up to there, with my fingers at the kind of the usual angle, is this is going to happen. That's one of the most commonplace bending problems I see people have. It's when they come out of the bend, they end up, causing a lot of unwanted open string noise. So the way we do that, or the way we avoid doing that rather, is to change the angle of your fingers. So watch as I go from playing some sort of regular non-bending notes into a string bend in this next example. Now, I was exaggerating that a little bit for the purposes of illustration, but basically that's the technique. You bend from a more kind of, I tend to think of it as, bend the string up from its south pole, basically. So you're doing that. You can't avoid crashing into these strings here. There isn't enough space between where this string lives and where this string lives for you to bend it up to the required pitch without trespassing on this string's territory. So you're always going to be disturbing those strings. The trick is to get out of it stealthily like this. So if I'm bending correctly now, I can escape that bend. I'm not even touching the strings with this hand. I'm not muting or anything like that. But if I'm on top of the strings, kind of pushing down and bending from like the usual fretting position, I will get that kind of noise. Doing it like this, however, I get no noise as I escape from the bend. So that's the main problem people have when bending strings. It's getting a clean sound from the string bend, and that's basically the tip I would have. Push the string up from underneath, and you will avoid disturbing the strings that you're trespassing on as you escape from the bend. Next.
How do you do vibrato?
Okay, vibrato. This is one of those things that you ask 10 different guitarists how they do vibrato, and you're probably going to get 10 different answers. But the way I do it is I like to, for instance, B.B. King used to have pretty much one point of contact and just do that to wobble the note. I can't really do it like that. Personally, myself, I need to brace my hand against the side of the neck like that, which then allows me to just wiggle it a little bit like that. Okay, and whether I'm doing it with that finger or that finger or that finger, whatever, I'm still kind of working off that same pivot point, which is here, like this. That's how I do vibrato, and you get so that you can vary the speed of it. Like one thing I like to do is, as a note is dying away, is to increase the speed of the vibrato. So maybe a bit like this. You find that in many guitar players' styles, Paul Kossoff, Angus Young, and so on. Another thing people often struggle with vibrato is adding vibrato to a string bend. Now, here's the way I tend to think of doing this, and this is the way I teach my students to do it, and it seems to work. Bend your note, with reference to the methods we were talking about in the previous example. Bend your note. Let's mute the mic. And once you're confident that you can get that pitch, then start letting it down and back up again, letting it down and back up again. That is vibrato, but I'm not talking about doing it at a sort of vibrato type speed, more like this. That kind of thing. And then with a bit of practice you can get to the point where you can just increase the rapidity of that variation, like this. And that's how I do vibrato on either bent or unbent notes. And those are the 5 things that I think over the past however long it is I've been doing this, decades, the 5 difficulties that I've experienced most with beginner to intermediate guitarists, and those are, well, for what I can tell you, the best solutions to them, or the solutions that seem to work, as I'm encouraging kind of fledgling guitarists on their way. These things, I've tried different solutions to these problems over the years, and these are the ones that I've come up with that seem to work the best. So I hope they've been some help to you if you are at that, as I say, beginner to intermediate stage of your progression. And that is very much the video for today, folks. Hope you found it useful and informative, and maybe even a little bit entertaining as well. And if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not give me a like while you're at it? As always, don't forget the live stream every Friday, 5 p.m. UK time, where we drink beer and talk about music and guitars. What's not to like? A fantastic way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.